Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to perform a little surgery. Metaphorically speaking, of course.
Thankful.
We aren't scrubbing in, but we are going to, crack open the skull and take a very close look at the architecture of the mind.
It is a fascinating subject. I think usually when people think about thinking, they just assume it's something that happens in a vacuum inside their head.
Right. You just sit there, you frown a bit, and a thought appears.
Exactly. But the research we're looking at today suggests that's not really how it works at all. Our cognition is heavily reliant on tools.
And we aren't just talking about neurons or synapses here. We're looking at the specific tools we use to build our reality.
Precisely. And we can divide these tools into two sort of main categories. First, you have the external tools, the technology, the smartphones, AIs, search engines, all of that.
The stuff in our hands.
And second, the internal tools, the language we speak, the grammar we use, the vocabulary we have.
So today is a two-pronged deep dive. We are looking at the hardware in our hands and the software in our heads.
That is a great way to put it, yeah. We are drawing from a really comprehensive discussion from the Learn English Lab, which creates this incredible synthesis of research from cognitive science, linguistics, and digital literacy.
And we're trying to answer two massive questions that I think haunt everyone, especially at like 3 in the morning.
Right.
First, is technology acting as a steroid for our brains, making us smarter, more capable? Or is it a crutch? Is it slowly making us intellectually lazy, unable to remember a phone number or navigate our own neighborhoods?
And the second question, which I think is even more mind-bending, does the language you speak actually dictate the way you perceive reality?
Yeah, it sounds like sci-fi.
It really does. Does a speaker of Mandarin experience time differently than a speaker of English? Does a Russian speaker see color in a fundamentally different way than I do?
Okay, the mission today is to explore this architecture of the mind. We want to unpack how our environment, both the digital one we scroll through and the linguistic one we speak in, shapes our problem solving, our memories, and maybe even our emotions.
And honestly, the stakes are pretty high. We aren't just using these tools. They are shaping us. They are physically and chemically altering how we process the world.
I love this topic because I constantly feel like a cyborg. My phone is basically glued to my hand, but I also have this terrifying suspicion that if I lost it, I wouldn't be able to function as a human being.
Yeah.
So let's start there. The external tools, this digital paradox. Are we getting smarter or are we getting lazier?
It's a paradox because the evidence points in both directions at the same time. It isn't a simple binary of tech is good or tech is bad. So let's start with the optimistic view, the case for technology making us smarter.
The catalyst for growth.
The source material calls it the catalyst for intellectual growth, yeah.
The most obvious point here is access.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the Library of Alexandria in our pockets.
We absolutely do. And it is easy to be cynical about it because, we use that library to watch cat videos. But the democratization of knowledge is profound.
Right.
We are seeing the removal of barriers that stood for centuries. Geography, cost, class. If you wanted to learn advanced physics in, say, 1990, you needed to be physically near a university, you needed money for tuition, and you had to be accepted.
Now you just need Wi-Fi.
Exactly. The source mentions platforms like Coursera, edX, Khan Academy, but it makes a really key distinction. We aren't just talking about access to the basics here. We aren't just talking about introduction to algebra.
Right, it's about depth, real depth.
Precisely. You have access to quantum mechanics, post-colonial literature, deep philosophical debates. You can access authentic materials like The Economist or watch university lectures from MIT or Oxford. 30 years ago, that information was locked away in physical stacks, accessible to a select few.
And now a curious teenager in a rural village has the same raw information as a Harvard professor.
That's the power of it.
There is also this idea of the feedback loop that really stood out to me. It's how search engines, Google, Bing, whatever, change the way we inquire about the world.
Yes. This is crucial. It creates a self-directed learning loop. Think about the old way. You have a question, you ask a teacher, or you look in an encyclopedia. If the answer isn't there, the journey just kind of ends.
Or you just stay confused.
Right. But now, you have a question, you search, you get an answer, and that answer almost always sparks a new question.
Right.
It allows for instant verification. You can compare a scientific paper to a blog post in seconds. It allows you, the learner, to be the driver of your own journey. You aren't just waiting for a syllabus to tell you what to learn next.
But it's not just about consuming info. It's about the tools that help us process it. The source talks about cognitive augmentation. I love that term.
It does sound futuristic.
It sounds like I should have a microchip in my neck.
It does, but it's actually very practical. It essentially means using technology to handle the extraneous cognitive load. Your brain has a limited amount of processing power. Think of it like RAM in a computer.
Yeah.
If you use half that RAM trying to remember your grocery list, your meeting schedule, and where you put your keys, you have less power left for the hard stuff, for complex problem solving.
So apps like Notion, Evernote, or Trello, they aren't just digital notebooks, they're like an external brain.
Exactly. By offloading the task of storage and organization, you free up your biological brain to focus on the complex processing. If you don't have to use your brain power to remember what you need to do, you can use all that power to actually do it.
That makes total sense. When I write everything down in my app, I physically feel lighter. I can actually focus on the work itself.
And this extends to language learning and writing, too. Tools like Grammarly, they aren't just spell checkers anymore,
Not at all.
They provide real-time feedback on tone, conciseness, clarity, and the source argues that if you engage with them properly, if you ask why the AI is suggesting a change, it becomes a coaching tool, not just a correction tool.
And looking forward, we have AI tutors. The idea that a system can spot that I keep messing up, say the third conditional in grammar, and then generate drills specifically for me. That's a level of personalization we've never seen.
Even a human private tutor struggles to generate infinite unique examples on the fly.
Right.
So that is the case for Smarter. Technology removes friction, deepens access, and offloads grunt work. But we have to look at the flip side. The source material is very clear about the dangers of cognitive offloading.
This is the lazier part of the equation. And this is my fear, that I'm slowly turning into a vegetable who can't do simple math in my head.
Atrophy is probably the better medical term. Cognitive offloading is when you rely so heavily on external tools that the brain stops doing the work it should do for exercise. The classic example is the calculator.
Yeah.
It replaces mental arithmetic.
Or GPS. I mentioned earlier that I might get lost going to the grocery store. I realized the other day I don't form mental maps anymore. I just follow the blue line on the screen.
That's a perfect example.
If the battery dies, I don't know if north is left or right. I'm completely lost.
And that is a perfect example of neural atrophy. The hippocampus, the part of the brain responsible for spatial navigation, it literally changes structure based on use. London taxi drivers, for example, have enlarged hippocampi because they have to memorize the entire map of the city.
Wow.
If you don't use the neural pathways for mapping your environment, they weaken. You are, like you said, outsourcing your sense of direction to a satellite.
The source also mentions translation apps. And I am so guilty of this. I travel, I see a menu, I pull out my phone, use Google Lens.
Snap, translate, order.
It feels like magic.
It is magic in a way, but think about what you've bypassed. You skipped the struggle of actually decoding the language structure. You skipped the pattern recognition. You got the result, the food, but you didn't get the learning.
It's like watching someone else lift weights and expecting my muscles to grow.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah. This connects to that concept from Daniel Kahneman, right? System 1 versus System 2 thinking. Can we unpack that?
Yeah.
Because I think it explains why we're so drawn to this laziness.
Absolutely. This is the dual process theory, and it is crucial here. Kahneman posits that we have two modes of thought. System 1 is fast, intuitive, automatic, and emotional. It's 2 plus 2 equals 4.
Instinctive.
Yes. It's recognizing a friend's face in a crowd. It requires almost no energy.
And System 2.
System 2 is the opposite. It's slow, analytical, effortful, and logical. It's calculating 17 times 24 in your head. It's parking a car in a really tight space.
The hard stuff.
The hard stuff. It requires focus and burns calories. The brain is an energy-conserving organ, so it naturally defaults to System 1 whenever it can.
So technology is basically the ultimate enabler for System 1. It's like a free pass to never use System 2.
Exactly. And the danger the expert source highlights is that tech convenience pushes us constantly towards System 1. We want the quick answer. We want the blue line. We are neglecting the mental muscle building of System 2.
We're avoiding this struggle.
And the struggle is where the learning happens.
I feel this when I'm reading online, too. The source calls it the deep reading crisis.
It is a real concern. The medium changes the processing. When you read a physical book, you tend to engage in linear, deep processing. Online, studies show we do this F-shape reading.
What's that?
We read the headline, scan the left side of the first paragraph, and then just scroll down the left side hunting for keywords.
Just looking for the negative info and then moving on.
Right. This erodes the ability to engage with dense texts or complex arguments. And worse, there's the memory impact. If we know we can look something up later, we don't encode it into long-term memory.
That is scary. So, because I know Wikipedia is always there, my brain decides, don't bother saving this file.
That's basically it. Active retrieval struggling to remember a fact strengthens the memory pathways. Passively Googling it does not.
It's the difference between walking a path through the forest, which keeps the path clear, and taking a helicopter over it.
The path overgrows.
Exactly. Okay, so we are navigating this minefield. We have the library of the world. But we might be losing the ability to read the books deeply. That brings us to the next layer of this, actually navigating the digital world. Because if the barrier to entry is gone, that means anyone can publish anything.
Which brings us to the misinformation elephant in the room. Digital literacy is now a survival skill, not a luxury.
It's not optional anymore.
Not at all. The source emphasizes that it isn't enough to just find information, you have to verify it. In a library, a publisher vetted the book. On the internet, well, nobody vetted the tweet.
They talk about lateral reading. I've never heard this term before. What is it?
It's what professional fact-checkers do. Most of us read vertically. We stay on the website and look at the About Us page to see if it's reliable.
Which is silly.
It is, because a scam site will just say, we are very reliable.
Right. Trust us. We're experts.
Lateral reading means you immediately leave the site. You open new tabs. You search for the author, you search for the organization, you check their funding sources, you see what other reputable sources say about them.
You look sideways across the web, not down the page.
Exactly. It's a simple, powerful technique.
That's so simple, but I bet 90% of people don't do it.
There's another risk mentioned here that I think is fascinating. The copy-paste mentality. Especially now with all the AI writing tools.
Oh, this is huge. If I have an AI write my essay or my email, I skip the synthesis phase. Writing isn't just about the final output. It's about the thinking process required to organize your thoughts into a coherent structure.
You miss the hard work.
You do. If you skip structuring the argument yourself, you risk a sort of homogenization of thought.
You lose your own voice. You start to sound like the average of the internet.
That's a great way to put it. And speaking of losing things, let's talk about the social and emotional side effects. We are more connected than ever, but the source argues we might actually be losing empathy.
Is that just because of the screen? It comes down to the lack of face-to-face cues. In text communication, email, social media, we miss body language, tone of voice, micro-expressions.
All the human stuff.
All the human stuff. And this can chip away at our emotional intelligence. It's easy to be cruel to a username. It's much harder to be cruel to a human face. Plus, you have the echo chamber effect. Algorithms feed us what we already agree with, which limits our intellectual growth.
And the dopamine loops, the notifications, the likes, it prioritizes that instant gratification over the sustained focus you need for deep learning. So what is the solution? Do we just throw our phones in the river and go live in a cabin?
Tempting, I know, but no. The source suggests a more moderate approach, blended learning. The goal isn't to reject tech, but to use it intentionally.
Be the master, not the servant.
Exactly. Use AI for brainstorming, but do the drafting yourself. Use apps for vocabulary drills, but engage in real-world conversation for fluency. And manage your focus. Use techniques like the Pomodoro method.
25 minutes on, 5 minutes off.
Right. Or create tech-free zones in your house, like the dinner table or the bedroom. You have to actively reclaim your attention span.
Okay, so that covers the external tool technology. Now, I want to pivot to the internal tool. This is the part of the research that really blew my mind.
Yeah.
We are moving from the device in your hand to the software running in your mind.
Language.
And we have to talk about the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. This sounds like a plot point from a sci-fi movie.
It basically is. The movie Arrival is based on this very concept. The hypothesis at its core is that the language you speak affects how you think. But we have to be careful here.
Okay.
Because there are two versions of this theory, and one of them is pretty much debunked.
That's the strong version, right? Linguistic determinism.
Correct. Linguistic determinism says that language dictates thought. That if you don't have a word for a concept, you are physically incapable of thinking it. Like in Orwell's 1984, where they try to remove the word freedom so people can't want it.
Which is a terrifying idea, but it's not scientifically true.
Right. Modern linguistics rejects this. You can imagine a specific shade of color even if you don't have a name for it. You can feel an emotion you can't name.
Yeah.
But the weak version, which is known as linguistic relativity, is widely accepted.
And what does the weak version say?
It says that language influences or biases thought. It makes certain cognitive paths easier or more habitual to follow. Think of it like a landscape. You can walk through the thick brush, but if there is a paved road, your brain is probably going to take the road.
Language paves the roads.
That's a perfect analogy. It's not a prison, it's a preferred path.
I love that.
Yeah.
Let's get into the sticky details then. The source gave some incredible examples of how this actually works in the real world. Let's start with time.
This is one of my favorites because time seems so fundamental, right?
Yeah.
A clock ticks the same for everyone.
But we don't describe it the same way. In English, we view time as linear, horizontal. We look forward to the future. We put the past behind us.
Right. If I ask you to point to tomorrow, you'd probably point straight ahead. But in Mandarin Chinese, while they also have horizontal metaphors, they rely heavily on vertical metaphors. The word shang, which means up, refers to the previous or the past. The word xia, down, refers to the next or the future.
So the past is above you, and the future is below you, like a waterfall.
Yes. Think of it like a river flowing down or a stack of papers. The ones you've already read are on top of the pile. And here's where it gets really scientific. The source cites research by Lira Boroditsky. She did these reaction time tests.
How did that work?
She'd show people images on a screen, and she found that if she primed Mandarin speakers with precisely, the metaphor creates a mental image, and your brain uses that image to process reality more efficiently. If your language's image matches the input, you're faster.
The source also mentions the Hopi language.
Yes, this is from Benjamin Lee Horf's original work. He argued that while English segments time into units, seconds, minutes, hours like objects you can count.
5 days.
Exactly. The Hopi view it more as a cyclical process. It's not 5 days, it's more like the sun recurring for the 5th time. Now, Horf's specific findings are a bit controversial today, but the core idea stands. How you talk about time shapes how you experience it passing.
Let's move to color. The blue experiment. This is another one where I just thought blue is blue.
In English, yes, we have light blue and dark blue, but they are variations of the same core category. If I show you a sky blue and a navy blue, you say those are both blue.
Right.
In Russian, however, there is no single word for blue. They have seminy for dark blue and goluboy for light blue, and these are two mandatory distinct categories.
So they're as different as pink and red are to us.
That's the perfect comparison. You wouldn't say pink is just light red, would you?
No, pink is pink.
Exactly. So they tested this. They showed English and Russian speakers squares of color drifting from light to dark blue, and they measured how fast they could spot the difference.
And the result?
Russian speakers were measurably faster at distinguishing between shades of blue, specifically when the colors crossed that linguistic boundary from goluboy to cine.
So their language has heightened their perceptual sensitivity.
Yes. Their brain has a distinct label for it, so it sorts the visual input faster. They are, in a very real sense, seeing the distinction more efficiently.
That's incredible. It's like their brain has an extra sorting bin that mine just doesn't have. Okay, the next one is my absolute favorite. Spatial navigation.
Ah, the human compass.
The Gugu Yimithir language. This one actually hurts my brain to think about.
This is a wild one. In English, we use egocentric coordinates. We say the cup is to your left or move it back. Everything is relative to our own body. If you turn around, left changes.
Right. Left travels with me.
But the Gugu Yimithir speakers, an Aboriginal group in Australia, they don't do that. They only use geocentric coordinates. Cardinal directions, north, south, east, west.
For everything.
For everything, regardless of scale.
So they wouldn't say, there is an ant on your left leg.
No, they would say, there is an ant on your southeast leg. Or, could you move that cup a bit to the north-northwest?
That sounds impossible. You would have to know where north is literally every second of your life.
Yeah.
Inside, outside, in a cave.
And they do. That's the point. Because their grammar demands it, they maintain absolute orientation at all times. They have a built-in compass.
But you could blindfold them.
They've done it. Blindfold them, spin them around in a windowless room, and ask them to point north. They can do it with incredible accuracy. Most English speakers have absolutely no clue.
That is the definition of architecture of the mind. They built a compass in their heads because their language required it.
It shows that language can force the brain to run a constant background process. a kind of biological GPS that our English-speaking brains just don't have turned on.
Let's look at something a bit more subtle. Grammar and gender. The bridge study. This is about those languages where every noun has a gender, right? A table is masculine, a chair is feminine.
Exactly. In German, the word for bridge is feminine die Brücke. In Spanish, it's masculine el puente. Now, a bridge is a hunk of concrete. It doesn't actually have a gender.
Right.
But researchers asked German and Spanish speakers to describe a bridge.
And the descriptions match the grammatical gender.
Perfectly. German speakers use words like elegant, fragile, slender, beautiful. Spanish speakers use words like strong, sturdy, dangerous, towering.
That is crazy. So the he or she label that's attached to the word actually changes the personality we assign to a completely lifeless object.
It creates a subconscious bias.
Right.
The lens of the language colors the object. And finally, for these case studies, we have evidentiality. This was the Turkish example.
This one made me wish we had this in English. It seems so useful.
It's fascinating. In English, if I say, it rained last night, I don't have to tell you how I know. Maybe I saw it, maybe my friend told me, maybe I just inferred it.
Right. It's just a fact.
In Turkish, the verb suffix changes based on the source of the information. There's one suffix that means, I saw it rain with my own eyes. A completely different suffix means, I heard it rained, or I inferred it because the ground is wet.
So you basically have to cite your sources in casual conversation.
You are grammatically forced to evaluate the quality of your evidence every time you open your mouth. The cognitive implication is that Turkish speakers might be habitually more sensitive to the source and reliability of information because their language makes them tag it constantly.
Imagine if Twitter required that. I heard this, I saw this, or I am just making this up.
The world might be a very different place.
Moving on. We've talked about logic and space, but what about feelings? The intersection of culture, emotion, and the multilingual brain.
This is about emotional granularity. The source discusses those famous, untranslatable words that capture these really complex cultural states.
Like Schadenfreude in German, taking pleasure in someone else's misery, or Hege in Danish, that feeling of cozy contentment.
Or mono, no-aware in Japanese, that bittersweet sadness for the beauty of impermanence. Or saudade in Portuguese, that deep, longing nostalgia for something that might never return.
These are beautiful words, but does just knowing them actually change anything for you?
The research by Lisa Feldman Barrett suggests it absolutely does. She talks about emotional granularity. People who have more specific words for their feelings can actually regulate their emotions better.
How so?
Well, if you only have the word bad to describe a negative feeling, you just feel bad. It's a big, messy blob. But if you can distinguish between sadness, disappointment, melancholy, and ennui, you can address the specific feeling more effectively.
It's like having a better diagnostic tool. If a doctor just says you're sick, that doesn't really help. If they say you have a bacterial infection, you know the cure is an antibiotic.
That's a perfect analogy. If you can name it, you can tame it.
The source also touches on reasoning styles. This is a big cultural difference. Western languages, like English, are often very rigid. Subject, verb, object, the boy threw the ball. We focus on the actor, the subject. This correlates with analytical thinking.
We zoom in on the main character.
Right.
Whereas Eastern languages, which are often more context-dependent and frequently drop pronouns, correlate more with holistic thinking. They focus on the relationship and the environment. There was a study where they asked people to describe a picture of a fish tank.
And the difference was stark.
Very. Analytical thinkers, mostly Westerners, tended to focus on the big fish in the middle. They'd describe its color, its size. Holistic thinkers, mostly Easterners, focused on the whole pond ecosystem, the water, the rocks, the background plants, and how all the fish related to each other.
Now, I know many of our listeners are bilingual. We have a global audience. What does all this mean for them? The multilingual advantage.
It is significant. If you speak 2 languages, your brain is like a gym that never closes. Managing 2 languages strengthens the brain's control tower, the prefrontal cortex. It improves executive function because you are constantly inhibiting one language to speak the other. You have to actively suppress English to speak Spanish and vice versa.
It's a constant mental workout.
It really is, and it provides something called cognitive reserve.
Okay.
This is amazing. Bilingualism acts as a buffer against dementia. Even if the physical brain starts to show signs of deterioration, the bilingual brain can function at a higher level for longer because it has built more alternative neural pathways.
It's like having a backup generator for your mind.
That's a great way to think of it. Plus, there is the metalinguistic awareness. If you speak two languages, you know that a table isn't really a table. It's also a mesa or a tish.
You realize the label is arbitrary.
Exactly. You see language as a lens, not just a transparent window. And that allows for greater empathy and perspective taking. You understand on a deep level that there is more than one way to describe, and therefore more than one way to experience reality.
We are coming into the home stretch here. We've looked at the external tools technology and the internal tools language. But now these two things are crashing into each other.
They're merging. We are seeing the rise of large language models, LLMs, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini. These AIs are generating vast amounts of text. And the source highlights a fascinating and slightly unnerving risk. Will human thinking adapt to be more processable by AI?
That's a chilling thought. Are we going to start talking like robots just so the robots understand us better?
It is a possibility. I mean, we already change how we search on Google. We use keywords instead of full sentences. We might start structuring our own thoughts in ways that are better for prompting an AI. But there's another risk, too. Bias.
The training data.
Yeah, right. If the AI is trained heavily on English-dominant data or Western-centric data, are we accidentally importing those specific linguistic biases, those specific views of time, space, and reasoning into global thought?
So if the AI thinks linearly, will it force the rest of the world to start thinking more linearly?
It's a real question. And you also have the concept of global digital English. Social media X, TikTok is creating this hybrid language, memes, code switching, abbreviations, PV, TFW, RIS.
Things I have to look up every week.
On one hand, it creates a certain cognitive agility. You have to be quick to understand the new slang. But on the other hand, it might shorten our attention spans for traditional, complex sentence structures. We're seeing a shift in the landscape towards brevity and impact over nuance.
So let's wrap this all up. We have covered a lot of ground today. From the Library of Alexandria in our pocket to the compass inside our brain. What is the synthesis here?
If we boil it all down, I think the takeaway is that both technology and language are tools that don't just describe our reality, they actively construct it. You are the architect, but these are your building materials.
And for you, the listener, the learner, there's a real call to action here, isn't there?
For technology, be intentional. Don't let the tool use you. Choose the hard way sometimes. Do the math in your head. Write the first draft yourself. Keep those System 2 mental muscles sharp. Don't let your cognitive map atrophy.
And for language?
For language, be aware of your lens. Recognize that your view of the world, your perception of time, your sensitivity to color, your navigation of space is shaped by your vocabulary and grammar. And it's not the only view.
Seek out other perspectives.
Exactly. Learn a new language. It isn't just a skill for a resume. It is a way to fundamentally expand your cognitive architecture. It literally gives you a second pair of eyes to see the world with.
I want to leave everyone with a final provocative thought. We talked about how language shapes thought and how tech is now shaping language. As we move into a future dominated by AI-generated language and instant global digital communication, are we heading toward a homogenization of human thought? Are we all going to start thinking the same way?
Or, and this is the flip side, will we evolve entirely new cognitive structures that we can't yet even imagine? A new hybrid mind for our new hybrid world.
Something to chew on. Keep questioning your own perception. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.